it was sort of funny today. I had forgotten we were reading about Jose Ballou, and I was late this morning. Sometimes happens. And I generally go out to breakfast on Sundays because it's an easier way to make sure that I actually eat before I come. And so I got my breakfast and I ate. And as I was walking out the door, or getting ready to walk out the door, the woman said to me, "Are you leaving already?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm late." I said, "It's the odd thing about church, but they tend to like you to show up on time." And somebody said, "Well, why do you go there?" And I said, "Well, I'm sort of the minister." I thought I'm not going into the whole thing. I'm just going to tell them, like, okay. And this guy looks at me and he goes, "Oh, then they can't start without you because you bring the Lord with you." And I thought, if there is anything less you than that particular phrase, anything less universalist, so I'm here just as I am without one plea, And hopefully someone brought the Lord with them if he or she believes in him or her. So thanks, Stephen. That was great. Great. It's great to have. There was probably one of the reasons I was late is that a friend of mine who's a minister down in Dallas posted this thing about why do we go to church, and we don't go for the concerts and we don't go for the hymn singing, and it's like, really? Because the concerts, you can always get better concerts otherwhere. Really? And hymn singing together, it's really important, and we have fun, we do a good job, so thank God. It's not just the sermons, right? So we've just gotten through January, and for some reason it seems every year that I have a little window of time in that month in which I can read and think a bit. I told Sarah the other day that I had been getting enough sleep. "Well, good for you," she said, "but dangerous for us. You've probably been thinking." And although I have to say that some of what's going on around here is a result of Sarah's thinking. A few of us are headed to Bucknell. We thought it was going to be tomorrow, but actually it's going to be in a couple weeks, but to talk about a film project their students are going to do for Love Flows. We can blame that good fortune on Sarah's eagle eye, associative brain, and willingness to do the work. And it's not that I haven't been thinking about Love Flows, and I won't reference it here, but I've been thinking about a couple other things as well. I've even read 2 real books that turn your brain on rather than off, which is why I often read. People have been telling me I needed to read Pastrix by Nadia Bowles-Weber, which is subtitled The Cranky, Beautiful Faith of a Sinner and Saint. I understand why people like her. She's funny, vulnerable, and profane. I'm not sure that I like her designations of sinner and saint. That's very distant from my theology. But I'm also not a recovering addict, daily hovering on the brink, a brink from which it may well be that only an other with a large O can call one back. That's not true for everyone, but it is true for many. And her Christianity is very different from what mine was when I understood myself to be Christian. I've said before, I'm a low church priestess. Sacramental movement for me is predominantly horizontal rather than vertical. My spiritual search is toward rootedness rather than enlightenment. I was born wifty. I don't need this. I need this. I need the community in which to anchor my dreams and visions. Communion for me is not transubstantiated, which means that God hops into it, but communally and unconditionally shared. You feed me as much as I feed you. And we have fundamentally different ideas about grace. I find grace real and important, but I don't find it an exclusively divine option. Those moments of beauty in our lives, whether just of an appreciated moment or a grand reprieve, in my book, are not the sole property of a loving God. And I say that knowing that I, unlike many of you, believe in a divine connection. I would probably prefer to believe that grace comes from love, but perhaps it is only love and our impulse toward life that allows us to recognize random options, however beautiful. You may ask what it matters that she talks about grace, and it matters to me only that she talks about it in exclusive terms. I worry for those who hear about the exclusivity of grace in a particular religion and believe it beyond them. I worry that it leaves people feeling responsible for things that just are. Yesterday, a friend sent me a piece thought to be quite daring that proclaimed that the law of attraction, as taught by New Thought religionists, isn't true. Oh, the recriminations that went on that site. Do people know what the law of attraction is according to, it's New Thought, and it says that if I think it hard enough, it will come to me. So it's some of that clapping for Tinkerbell, which I think is important. We all need to clap for Tinkerbell, but it's clapping for Tinkerbell without doing the work. And it's also thinking that somehow I am deserving of all of the riches, and it's always about riches and good fortune that comes my way. So my kid won't stand on a soccer ball and fall off and break his arm. You know, my kid won't this. I won't get cancer. My sister won't die, you know. And this was posted to me from a friend who had just been diagnosed with incurable cancer. And the things people have said to her are unbelievable. Well, if you can just get to the root of why you got this cancer. She's a nurse. I've talked about her before. So it's if you don't know it, it's also the American dream. You can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Don't you worry your pretty little head about the racism, the classism, the sexism, any of the other stuff that's bothering you. Just think it, do it, be it. And, this is tough for me because some of that stuff I'm all about, I'm the evangelist here, but so the people in California aren't responsible before my girlfriend, or responsible to her, responsible for help to her if she couldn't or wouldn't cast out the cancer like the demon from the Middle Ages. Kind, well-meaning people seeking refuge in magical thinking as a shield against encroaching disease. It could never happen to me, and yet it does. Grace is needed for so many reasons. This January, I've been reading the second book I've been reading, and a book and a whole lot of articles, and I even went to to a lecture on white privilege. Here's the short version. It exists. We who are white profit from it. We profit from it unfairly over our brothers and sisters who are not white. If we are not aware of it, if we do not use it to make things better, our privilege, then we are vampires, sucking the life out of other people. There's a very effective trailer for a film I saw on Facebook. Thank God for Facebook. What did preachers do without it? Where an obviously black, well-spoken woman talked about going to the grocery store with her sister-in-law, also black, self-identifying as black, but white-looking. The sister-in-law went through the line first, chatting with the clerk, who took the sister-in-law's check without looking at it carefully. Black woman comes right along after her with her 10-year-old. No chit-chat, and the clerk asks for ID, and then looks up her name on the bad checklist. And this woman, obviously, you looked at her rings, you looked at her hair. This is a woman of privilege herself. So this woman's little girl is starting to get uncomfortable and looks at her mom and says, why? Why are they doing this to us? The white-looking sister-in-law steps in and says, why are you doing that? And interrupts the interaction. Her action, from that place of privilege, gave the women in line behind a model for acting on their discomfort. They all got the manager involved, and ultimately they changed the policy. Because, of course, although the clerk was sullen and her actions racist, she could act on her prejudices because it was socially permitted, even condoned by management. White privilege is real. When people of color and white people apply to the same schools with the same grades, white people have a 78% chance of being accepted versus a 22% chance for people of color. Likelihood of white males going to prison is 4 to 11%. Likelihood for men of color, 45 to 50. 11% of the prison population is white, 88% people of color. Over 80% of homicides are intra-racial, but 60% of reporting is of interracial slayings. And those figures are even greater if a person of color kills a white woman. So we're working on that to get the fear going. Some of these numbers came from a great comic depiction. And if you're interested, write to me, because I've had it up on my on the desktop. Thank you for a long time, so I can send it to you. But then I read about the cost of mental illness caused by privilege over. People in power suffer from narcissism to degrees it must be treated in hospitals. People perceived as less than suffer from depression. And of course, in this area, white privilege seems invisible because we don't see the other. And if we're going to be involved in deconstructing the paradigm, we must make an effort to cross the divide here. How many of us, how many of our children have friends across racial divides? Not occasional work buddies, but deep friendships. For all of us, it's our job to understand the differences and work with the discomfort. And discomfort will arise. It always does from difference. And in this region, and everywhere, we must be aware of class privilege. If we are really ready to shift the love project toward children and weekend food, we are taking strong action toward breaking down those divides. Because there is still nothing that changes people's opportunities like education. Being well-fed is a very important step in helping children learn to do well at school. There are other things we can encourage, but food in the belly is paramount, at least first. Actually, I wrote to my Swedish sister the other day, or last night, because she's been an educator over there. And in Sweden, most of the difficulties are arising in their educational system with people who are moving into the country out of war zones. So people who are coming from Syria, people who are coming from the Sudan, people who are... And so I said, so okay, I know you're feeding people. Can you tell me if the kids are cycling out of their systems and whether they remain caught in the poverty, which gets better supported and better looked at, or are they making it to college? Are they moving on? And she said, oh, nice, easy question, I'll write to you. So she's looking up the statistics. And then it finally dawned to me, well, duh, I live in a community of people who know how to do statistics. And actually it dawned on me finally, Kathy's probably the right person to do that, but we can write and find out what the educational statistics are here about. So I think I'll write to Kathy, but if anybody else knows anything about educational food, if you're getting food, how that works, where we can find those. Because if we're going to have this film, if we're ever going to ask for grants, which we're talking about doing, what do we want? We want our church involved. We want to be able to say that there are a lot of people from our community who are involved. We want to be able to say that we've talked to people in the wider community and there are a lot of people in the wider community involved. But we also want to be able to say this isn't just a fabulous little notion we have, but this is actually based in reality. It doesn't seem to take a lot to say, whether or not it makes kids better, they really should be fed on weekends. And we were just talking in the back and saying that there's a national program that's called a snack program that sends kids home with snacks for the weekend. They don't need snacks. They need food. So I think how we change that language is important. But I wonder the other night, looking at Dr. Tyson on stage, like him or not, how many scientists, poets, or musicians and historians get lost in this valley simply because children are hungry. In particular, if you're a hungry boy, you are fast-tracked into problem category and special ed. If we don't feed children, we're throwing them away because we don't help them compete, we don't help them complete, and become the people that it's in them to be. There was a great article in the Fixes column last Wednesday in the Times that talked about Franklin and Marshall and what they're doing to attract lower socioeconomic status kids. They've changed the way they award financial grants and assistance. They've gotten jobs for the kids who get there so they can buy pizza and hang out with the people they're in college with. The president has them to dinner over the holidays, those kids who can't fly home. With a whole group, I thought, oh my gosh, I hope that somehow someone's doing cleaning and cooking support for the family that now has to have, 15 kids adopted into their family. But, that's what we should be asking of the presidents of our college and the ministers of our churches. Don't ask me to cook, but, intellectually. So we're all coming to your house. But with a whole group of supports, they're finding that these kids, who might never have made it through college in any other way, are outperforming the other students because they're giving them not only the place to do it, but all of the tools they need and the encouragement. We have no idea what might come of our decision to feed kids and support good programs that already exist. We don't know what will be asked of us. We don't know where we will become the grace that is needed simply because we are willing to recognize that the deck is stacked unfairly and that we have work to do. I went with a couple of our UU comrades to hear Frank Schaefer speak on Tuesday. He's the Methodist who's been defrocked. Although happily it looks as if he and his wife will be moving to California, where the bishop has agreed. All of the bishops in California and on the West Coast have agreed that no one will be persecuted for breaking those particular ordinances in the Book of Order. And I've said before that this is a touchy subject for me. This issue is what started me on my journey out of the church of my youth and part of what fueled the journey that led me here. I'm sorry for Frank. And yet, about time. Step up. Long-term Methodists are frightened that there might be a schism over this issue. And I think, not as a Methodist, for years people have been driven away, disinvited, dehumanized because they love someone very much like themselves. Don't leave, they're implored. We're teaching a message of Jesus' love. Actually, no, you are not. There is no Jesus in a church where kids are committing suicide because they've been told there's nothing but hell ahead, and gay teens are 4 times more likely to commit suicide. There is no Jesus in tolerating and making space to hear the disgusting fantasies of self-justifying former sinners in the presence of GLBTQ people. People of privilege would never tolerate such cant about themselves. Why do we tolerate it for others? No, we have to let those people tell the world that you're not fully human, because that gives them a chance to speak. I find it difficult to care about a schism and a willingness to make peace with the Ugandan Methodists. And it's all over Africa. There was just a horrible thing in the paper. It's not Uganda, but where they're pursuing death penalty and flogging for gay people. We have to be active and involved in that. You don't flog. Well, actually, if it were me, you might sort of flog the gayness out of me. I don't know how much courage I'd have. But 35 years ago, this church, the UUA, big church writ large, we were 7 years behind the UCC in ordaining gay clergy. The first minister who came out in our denomination in 1969 was kicked out, but graciously allowed to return to his church as a custodian. So we were late to the party. 35 years later, there are still only 4 mainstream denominations that ordain gay clergy. How many people in these parishes suffer for not being seen? Let us be clear, no one asks straight people to endure the same indignities. One time my friend Sandra was called into her pastor's office and told at one and the same time how disgusting she was, and that they really needed her to teach more Sunday school and to bring more goodies. Now, you don't want to lose Sandra in your church, because she's got a Tupperware collection for goodies that vies with Denise and Sandy's and Lenore's. You know that this child knows how to make goodies, but you don't get to keep her and kick her out and kick her for loving her partner. We need publicly to make a place for UUCSV needs publicly to make a place for people, even if it's just where they pass through on their way to a new home. If we are nothing more than a railway station, then so be it. May it be so. There is more love somewhere, and we darned well better be it. Hungry kids, not okay. Unequal access to the party, not okay. Not for color, not for orientation, not for religious tradition, not okay. If we do not undertake to acknowledge and then consciously and consistently break down the barriers between us and those who are other, if we continue to profit from our specialness, we do miss the mark. It is our job to break down the barriers. Failing that is an unconscionable laziness and privilege. We need to be self-reflective. If you don't have mirrors in your house, put one up by the door you walk out every day and check yourself out. Know who you are and what you avoid. Too few of us reflect in a way that it enables us to figure out what to do differently. We've been taught by magazine after magazine that what matters is what we look like on the outside. We need to learn to look at ourselves in the eyes in a way that leads to responsibility rather than to avoidance. We need to stop excusing the hate mongers. We need rather to be spurred to action, to noticing what's wrong and figuring out how to make a difference. And we need to do that to a point that is outside our comfort zones, individual and collective, because that is the point at which we're learning and helping. We're pledging now. What do we want? What do we expect from church? Social Concerns is working on the Jungle Teen Project. This project may be what keeps kids from unwanted pregnancies and encourages them to believe in themselves enough to keep studying, to get noticed, to breathe, to dream bigger. That's worth money in the pot every Sunday. How else can we contribute? I know I'm not the only one who is both excited by and terrified by what we might do with Love Flows. When we have snow days now, I'm thinking about hungry teens and not just the beauty, or kids, not even teens yet. We haven't even started to think about hungry teens. Not just the beauty of the white fluffy stuff. I'm thinking $1.25 a week, $50 a year, $30 a month for a class. Can I take another $50 out of my budget every month? I don't know. Yes, I have responsibilities, but what about the need? How much important are my responsibilities in the face of hungry kids? And the church. How do we become visible and vocal? I'm overjoyed at the possibilities that have come to us this week. Bucknell will do a promotion piece for us. Billy Kelly and maybe KJ will write songs for us. And I'm talking to somebody else on Wednesday. Bill Staten's telling our kids today what Kathy told us, that not only are they receiving signed copies of Jane Fonda's new book on teenagers and sex, they're being asked to write reviews of the book that Random House is going to use in their national publication, because a church full of kids are reading it and recommending it. There we are, UUCSV in national press. Trading, to be sure, on Bill's relationships and recommendation. But let's let them find out who we are. Let's let them know we're a church that welcomes people and feeds hungry churches. Let's let them know when they come to look at us to find out who the heck is this church in the center of Pennsylvania, let's let that donation button be this big so that everybody comes here, gives us $10, $20, $50. Let's let them know we're a church that welcomes people and feeds hungry children. Let's let them know we pay our employees by pledges and yard sales. This week in one of our conversations or emails, Sarah said, I had a dream of teaching OWL to all ages for the entire valley. I woke up and I thought, I want to do this. When we get organized with Love Flows, maybe we can. I said, wait, who said we can only do one thing at once? We're taking care of Teen Jungle. I mean, who knows? Sarah, our little carefully dressed revolutionary. You all know that if I had said this, people would have, I mean, not so much in this church, but if I'd said this in the larger community, people would have gone like, oh, that Anne. Sarah, I love this, Put on your little preppy clothes and you go out there and say, we're going to teach sex to everybody. Love this. This is great. This is what revolution looks like, So it's sort of a great feint if you think about it. I'm walking around saying, let's be the valley where no child goes hungry. And people are not looking at me as if I'm crazy. They're like, could we do that? Could that be us? And Sarah's walking around saying sex and self-respect classes for everyone. Lois is helping to build a teen center. Harvey Partika's starting a seed library. That's fun. Allie's off taking classes in sustainability. And the list goes on, but it has to keep growing. Good theology, philosophy, makes us trouble with a capital T and a blessing to the world. Good and generous use of our privilege can make our work effective beyond our wildest dreams. Living beyond our wildest dreams and caring for one another is a pretty good definition of church, I think. May we look deeply into our hearts, our gifts, and our resources, and may we make it so. Blessed be.